questions that are being asked, I'd like to mostly address, so this is my preference, is questions that affect how you walk. Questions about living this out. What he's always told me is, tell them that if they're doing what they're supposed to be doing, they'll be where they're supposed to be. But you need a teacher to teach you what it is you need to be doing. All right, so the first question comes from Stephen Merchant. A Christian asked me first of all, a Christian asked you be careful when you answer anybody, okay, especially a Christian, because they will likely argue and they feel like they know what their scriptures very well, and you got to be careful that you actually are prepared and know what you're doing. All right, so a Christian asked me if Messianics do baptism. I honestly don't know how to answer that. In my walk, I was baptized by pastors thrice. Yeshua did the full immersion, but is there a Torah command to get baptized? Or was John the Baptist the first baptizer? I honestly don't know if I need a Messianic baptism. I'm circumcised, wear the tzitzit, keep kosher, and I'm learning to obey God's Sabbaths. Rabbi Steve, help me out, please. Todah. Todah means thank you in Hebrew, okay? All right, so I did cover this a little bit last night in the Torah portion study when I talked about them having to wash their garments and then also wash themselves. Throughout Scripture, there's instruction to immerse or to wash. And these things are always status change rituals. Okay, your state is being changed from clean, from unclean to clean, for example. Okay, you touch something. This was really dealing with the red heifer. They had to wash themselves and change their clothes, and basically in handling the heifer and then on handling the ashes. And so, because in doing so, they would become unclean and they had to be clean again to deal with the next thing. So it's about status change. When you get to see Yochanan doing it, John the Immerser, okay, John is doing this for a status change. He says, repent. So it's, again, going from a somewhat of an unclean state to a clean state. So you're repenting. And in that repentance, you're going in the water, and the idea being that you're burying whatever the old status was, and you're coming out in a new status, all right? So when you talk about, well, is there a scriptural command? Yes, the scriptural command does have to do with status change. Look, when Yeshua went to John, and he said to him, John, I need you to immerse me. What did John say? Me? No, you need to wash me. You need to immerse me. I'm not even worthy of any of that. And what did he say to John? He said, no, hold on. You have to do this to fulfill righteousness, because that means there's a Torah issue here. And Yeshua understood that to start ministering, that he would have to be immersed, and at age 30 to boot, okay? And so John didn't argue after that. He said, absolutely, and went and did it. Because when you're changing status, the mikveh or going in the water was a part of that. So if somebody asks you from Christianity about baptism, you say absolutely. And by the way, you say to them, you may not know this, but they went in the water for lots of reasons in the Old Testament. And they were what we would call today baptisms. And so we need to understand that. Now they'll say, well, there's one baptism for each thing had its purpose, okay? If I touched the dead animal, I would go and get baptized. I don't have to do that again for that same incident of touching the dead animal. If I'm being baptized for status change from Gentile into Israelite, then I don't have to do that 3 or 4 or 5 times. One time is sufficient. Do you understand? And so that's more what's going on in the New Testament when it talks about that you don't need to go ahead and keep getting re-immersed. You did it for that one reason, and that's good enough. Now, so when you start asking about your status, yes, it's great. You're circumcised, that's part of your sign of covenant. You're keeping the Sabbaths, that's one of the signs of the covenant, okay? You're keeping kosher, you're eating right, you're wearing tzitzit. You're doing a lot of the mechanical things, and I'm assuming there's a lot of other mechanical things that you're doing that's appropriate. One of the things, though, that we do is this mikveh to make the declarations that you're changing your citizenship. And so when m.t.o.i does a mikveh, it's about citizenship change. It's not really about clean and unclean. It's not really about any of these other things. It's about I'm going to become now a Torah-observant Israelite under the Creator, okay? Okay, so we understand that's why you should look at the m.t.o.i website under Holy Days. There's something called mikveh declarations. Now, those 8 declarations are declarations of a choice to change your status of citizenship, okay, of the world to of the above. Okay, and it's your commitments to do that. Just like when you get married, you're making public declarations of going from single to married. And you're making commitments to your spouse to be that when you become a spouse, these are the things that I'm going to do. And that's the same thing we do with the mikveh, 8 declarations that we have, okay? And some of you may say, where'd you get the 8 declarations? He just gave them to me, okay? I prayed and prayed. What am I going to do for this idea of a baptism or a mikveh? And that's what I got, okay? Actually, I only got 7 of them originally, and then we had a member that was saying something to me about annulling, vows and previous commitments, and I said, that's great, that should be in there too, and we added it. So that became number 7, actually, of the 8. We added it as number 7. So now there's 8 of them. And so the question is, if a Christian talks to you or anybody talks to you, help them understand that baptism is about status change. So should you get baptized right before you get married? Absolutely, you're changing your status. Or right after you get married. Should you do that when you become single? Let's say you become a widow or you become divorced. Well, guess what? You should probably do it again. Your status has changed. And so that's a good time to go ahead and do the mikvah. All right? Okay. I'll do one more, and then you almost ready, Rob? You got some good stuff. Okay. So Carmela Lazarus says, can you please give me some guidelines for if I have to stay at a hotel over the Sabbath? What is appropriate and what is not? Can I check in? If I've reserved the room ahead of time, can I check out? Can I eat the free breakfast? And anything else you can think of? Thank you so much for your guidance. I want to obey Yah the best I can, even on the road. Somebody else had asked a question similar to that. I don't have it in my notes here. About what do you do if you're on a cruise? I mean, what are you going to do with a cruise? Okay, so first of all, if you're going to stay somewhere, I would, if possible, not stay over the weekend. So I won't have to deal with Sabbath issues. But sometimes it's unavoidable. Your travel has you traveling where you're going someplace for 4 or 5 or 6 or 7 days, and it has to have a Saturday in the middle of it somewhere. Maybe you're going for even longer. You're going someplace for 10 or 12 or 15 days. Then it's going to have at least one Sabbath or more in there. So what do? You got to handle it somehow. So let's deal with it first from the hotel idea, then I'll deal with the cruise idea. So with a hotel, I think, is it in Focus, Gary, that talks about active and passive commerce? Are you dropping the link now? Okay, so I did a little mini teaching about things like this. And so go look at that, but I'll give you a quick summary of it. When we are talking about things like hotels and what you can do or not do, Sabbath in the commandment given in the 4th commandment has certain issues. One of the issues is that you are to not do commerce. One of the issues is that neither your manservant nor your maidservant should work. And so that's where people get confused. So the first thing is, what does it mean to be somebody's manservant or maidservant? Well, that means they literally have to work for you and you have authority over them. So when you go to the hotel, do you have authority over those people? No, they're going to work whether you showed up or not. Even if you never went to the hotel, they'd still be there working. You can't make them stop. You have no authority. The person that was on your property working for you back in those days, who was in charge of whatever they were doing on your property, they worked for you. You have authority over them. You were their boss or employer, whatever it was. You could tell them take the day off or to work, right? You have authority. By the way, that means that all of you that have businesses, if your business is open on Saturday, that's a problem because you're the boss. And so those people are your manservants and maidservants because you pay them. Somebody say, well, I'm paying these people that at the restaurant. No, you're not. The employer is paying them. You don't pay their salary. You don't write the check. You're paying the business for whatever, if that's what you're doing, but you don't write the check for that. Now, so number one, we're talking about who's your maidservant, who's your manservant. So again, same thing like the electricity that you're using or the internet that you're using. None of those people working at those places work for you. You have no control over them. That's issue number one. Does the person actually fall under the category where you have authority to make them work or make them not work? If the answer is no, then it doesn't fall under manservant and maidservant. Okay, that's number one. Number two, this idea of commerce. Okay, there's two types of commerce, the way I've described it. Okay, this is why we need a modern day Talmudic sort of documentation out there, something that we can write all the stuff out, and we'll get that eventually. These are the Deuteronomy 17 type discussions and decisions that we need to understand. So there's two types of commerce, active and passive. Okay, so active commerce would be my walking into a restaurant, sitting down and buying something, or walking into a store, walking in and paying and buying something. That's active commerce. Anybody watching me would think I'm doing business, all right? Then there's passive commerce. Almost all of you either pay a mortgage or rent. Okay, do you pay it on Saturday? No, you pay it once a month whenever it comes out of your account, probably automatic, and you have nothing to do with it. So that's passive commerce, because Saturday, you're actually paying for Saturday, but you're not actively paying just for Saturday each day, okay? So that would be more of a passive commerce. How about your electric bill? Do you pay for Saturday? No, it's included in the whole month. Internet, same thing. All these things that you do, you're paying passively. So nobody thinks you're doing commerce on Shabbat because you're paying for the whole month, okay? So that's another point. Now, continuing, let's look at it from the point of view of, okay, when you go to a hotel, because that's what the question was, right? You go into a hotel. Well, actually, let's finish with things like restaurants. So if I go into a restaurant, somebody's going to assume that I'm doing business. Some of you want to be cute, though. You want to show up at about 30 minutes before sundown, pay the check up front after you order your food, and then sit there after sundown thinking, well, I paid before it was Shabbat. Well, but nobody in the restaurant knows that because most people pay at the end. So you look like you're breaking Shabbat. You look like you're doing active commerce. Now let's take that to the hotel. You see me at a hotel, and it's Saturday morning, and I'm walking around the hotel or leaving or coming or going. It doesn't look like I'm doing any business because people know that people stay at hotels for multiple days at a time. So unless they see me going to the desk and paying for something, everything I'm doing at that hotel is passive commerce. You must check in before Sabbath and check out after Sabbath, and then you pay. Because I don't know anybody else that would understand it any differently. If they don't see me at the desk, I'm not doing business. So you shouldn't be at the front desk. Now, of course, if you're at the front desk, you could be just saying, I had a problem with my room, or I need a towel. Okay? Which, by the way, you should try to get all these things ahead of time, knowing you might need them, so that you don't need anything on Shabbat. Okay, now let's continue. So a hotel, you can stay there over a weekend. You're traveling somewhere, you got to get there for business or something. You're there Thursday, you're leaving on Monday or Tuesday. Fine. Go and check in, go through the weekend, and then you check out and you pay. Now, as far as what do you do on Saturday? You still keep it like Shabbat. I don't care where you are. I don't care if you're at a hotel. I don't care if you're home. I don't care if you're on a boat. You still treat Shabbat like Shabbat. And we'll get to that in a little bit in a second. We deal with cruises. So you're at the hotel. So the question then becomes, all right, can I check in if I've removed ahead of time? Yes. Can I check out? Yes, but not on Saturday. All right. What about the free breakfast? Okay. You can eat the free breakfast. What do you mean? They're making breakfast for everybody. It's just like the electricity you're using is being made for everybody. You're not handing them any money for it. It was included in what you were doing. Now, don't eat anything they're cooking for you. I mean, go have a bowl of cereal or a Danish or a piece of fruit or whatever you want to have if that's what you want to have. Okay? But no, I'm not going to have them cook anything for me because it's Shabbat. But yes, you can have that. I know it's going to mess with some people. Then don't like it, go somewhere else. All right. It's just straightforward, okay? He put me in this position for this leadership and for the people that want to understand that. If you don't like it, then go find somebody that says what you want to hear. I'm just being straightforward with you, okay? Now, you can take it further and just decide to not go to anything, that even the free breakfast at the hotel, and you can provide your own stuff and bring it to your room and do all that. Now, that would be certainly preferable. That would certainly be preferable. It's not always, something you can actually do depending on where you are and what's available, what time you showed up to the hotel and all your travel things, that maybe something went completely sideways and delays were here and there and whatever, and you just didn't have any way to get something in advance. You can always not eat, by the way. Fasting is totally allowed on Shabbat. I'm just letting you know my answer to the question here as far as that. Okay, so that's the guidance for that. Now, of course, if you're on a cruise, I go on cruises fairly often. I guess it's the most common vacation that I do. Okay, I've gone on 8 or 10 of them over the last, say, 20 years. That's probably a lot, relatively speaking. I always go Sunday to Thursday or Monday to Friday. The cruise that I used to go on that was Sunday to Thursday, they switched it and made it now Monday to Friday. I do not cruise generally over a weekend. However, my wife wants me to go with her on some of these things that might be more like a Mediterranean thing or some other thing that may go 10 or 12 days or 2 weeks or whatever it is. And I'm all totally okay with that. However, on Saturday, starting Friday night, I will not be out on the deck partying with everybody else. I'll still go eat, probably at the buffet where I could just take the food I want to take that's, not cooked or whatever it is that I can go ahead and get, bring it to my room or go find someplace off quiet on the boat where I'm not partying with everybody. And I'm going to try to enjoy my Sabbath. And then during Saturday time, I'm going to try to watch the stream, if I can get the stream on because a lot of these boats have internet. I've always get the internet when I go because I have to work from there anyway. And so I can watch the stream. And there's things that you can do to keep Shabbat wherever you are. Are you going to guard and protect these things? That's the question. Are you going to make the effort to guard and protect? So how do you guard and protect? Well, first thing is, if you can, avoid the problem. Try not to do things where you need to be at a hotel over the weekend or be on a cruise over the weekend. Try to minimize those issues. Sometimes it's unavoidable, though. By unavoidable meaning what you want to do is going to be 2 weeks long. All right, I'm not going on a weekend cruise where 1/3 of the cruise is Shabbat. What's the point of that? You're not going to be able to really enjoy the cruise, okay? So I'm talking about if I go something that's longer than a week, I don't mind having one day where I'm not going to deal with the cruise, all right? And avoid all the people and all the craziness and keep Shabbat. So it's challenging but doable, if that makes any sense, okay? So I answered 2 of the questions here, and so now we'll go to the live stream. Shamash Rob.
Okay. Just on that, Rabbi, we used to travel here a lot. The hotels that we always stayed at, and we get rooms for some people sometimes when they come, so we get a discount, the points, whatever. But we have an app that allows us to pay in full on a Friday before, so we don't have to do anything for that whole weekend. So it's just one of the things. A lot of the hotels allow you to do that. You can pay up front, and you don't have to worry about any of that. So.
Well, look, either way it doesn't matter because every time, and I travel quite a bit, I give them my card up front, and when I check out, they've automatically just charged the card and give me a bill slid under my door or whatever. There's nothing, I don't even have to go to the front desk. I just leave, right? Because it's all done. There's nothing really to do. The point is the active versus passive. Is anybody going to be watching what you're doing at the hotel and look at you and say, oh, you're doing business? So whether you paid before you got in or afterwards, okay, it doesn't really matter. Now, because you would check out after sundown, as far as you're checking out, okay? Now, if you paid your bill up front and you're going to leave before sundown because you're from out of town, you're just staying, well, that would work too, because again, somebody sees you just leaving the hotel, doesn't know that you're doing anything because you didn't go to the front desk, you didn't have to do anything. You paid for it, and it's Shabbat, but you can still leave and start to go wherever you want to go. I don't like to travel on Shabbat. I don't think that's really Shabbat worthy, so I would wait till after sundown. It may not be convenient because sundown may be late and you're going to get wherever you're going very late, but that's just the way it is. I'd rather plan to leave on Sunday. I'm not stressing myself out and not dealing with that, okay? And so that's really more of the issue. Okay, next.
Yes, sir. Okay, from Miss K, it says, when I feel having shalom, I guess when she's having shalom, am I walking a fine line next to being lukewarm?
No. Okay? There's a difference between being at peace and becoming complacent. Okay, lukewarm, I can have a lot of peace and have a lot of excitement too. Okay, peace doesn't mean that I'm not in a good, energized, happy state. Peace means I don't have anxiety, stress, depression, anger, any negative emotion going on, okay? And so when we come to Shabbat, most of us, hopefully, are experiencing an energized shalom. And so it's when you're complacent that's more the lukewarm, where you don't really care, you don't have a whole lot of emotion in any direction, and you're just sort of existing and going through the motions that you can tend to go in a left or right instead of staying straight type of thing, okay? All right. By the way, let me just throw this in there. That question's answered, but let me just throw this in there. I know a lot of you are challenged, and some of you are really excited by some of the things that are a little bit different here at Beth Shalom, since I have Mercy up singing and Elder up here talking and doing the things they do, because they don't do things the way I do, okay? Because I don't have any of that outward passion and excitement that they tend to have. And some people don't like that. Well, grow up and get over it. Okay, and some people really like it. Well, good for you, I'm glad you do. I like that there's a contrast, that we don't just have one flavor. What I don't like is if it's fake. See, Mercy's showing you genuine where she's at. She goes, my yellow is activated today, and I'm excited, and I'm having fun, and I'm praising Yah. All right? And so the freedom to express, got to remember, we have a king in Scripture named David, who was pretty expressive about how he felt about the Almighty. He didn't, I don't picture David just going, yeah, I think he's pretty good. I mean, David is just expressive, okay? He's whirling, twirling, singing, dancing. I mean, he's just praising, okay? And you know what? This congregation had none of that from me, and then because it was really just only me for a long time, this congregation had none of that. And then Elder started, he came to the congregation, and Mercy came to the congregation, and now we have a slightly different energy and flavor that comes out during parts of the service. I love it. I don't mean I love it because I participate. That's not my personality. But I love it because it's something that I can't bring, but I think is good, if that makes sense. I don't want you thinking, well, that's too much like the church I went to. Well, get over it. Not everything that's good, out there is untainted from somebody out there doing something that's not good, similar. Because you want to think, well, if it's good, then there shouldn't be any imitation or bad. Everything that's good is imitated in some bad way. All right? The difference is they, in a false or phony way, generate it. Okay? It's falsely generated, not natural expression. I feel the genuine expression that comes out. Okay? This is not like when the music stops and the person starts getting all preachy. She's trying to just show you, I'm excited. You guys, let's be excited too. Let's praise him. So she's more the cheerleader than some of these guys get really preachy when they get the song going, get the music going, and in between songs, they start quoting scripture and doing all that. So trying to get you like it's another teacher. I'm not a big fan of all that. I see other ministries doing that still today, even Messianic ones. But when these guys up here who are singing get excited, well, good. And then they get you excited. Good. Some of you get real uncomfortable. Good. Because some of you maybe have a problem expressing yourselves. He says in the verse, look, we have a song we do that's a recorded song, right? One of the 4 dance songs that we do called Sing and Dance Unto the Lord. Sing and dance. That's pretty expressive. And we have all these songs that praise him this way, praise him that way, and we've got all these things in terms of all the Psalms that talk about making joyful noises and shouting and all. Shouting! Shouts of joy and victory. Shouts of joy. Well, Mercy had a few shouts of joy today. Okay? But some of you don't like that. Good. It's okay. I'm allowing it, so you're going to have to get over it. Because I like that they're bringing something that I think is good and different that I don't bring, okay? And it is different, but you're not getting it from me. Not because I think it's wrong, it's just not me. I don't do that. I feel the same as them, I just don't express it that way, okay? It's just not my personality. Elder gets a lot more out of his 9% yellow than I get out of my 13% yellow, okay? All right. But then again, it's being stomped on by 87% red, so, that's kind of the difference. He doesn't have that problem, all right? His blue side gives it a lot more room to spread its wings and run a little bit, or fly a little bit. All right, so I just wanted to throw that out there because, I think that comes along with some of the things that, like we're getting from the live stream, is that we should be able to understand that some of the things that the churches do, there's nothing wrong with it. It's the way they do it or how they're using it or what they're using it for that tends to be the problem, if that makes any sense, okay? And I think mostly it's because it's generated to manipulate. It's generated to, you know what, I'll just leave it at that. I think it's generated to manipulate, okay? Where I felt really, absolutely 100% that what you saw today and you get most weeks is generating encouragement. It's meant to inspire and encourage, hey, get excited. Take the shackles of all your life stinks and everything, and just release all that and praise him. I mean, there's one thing that's consistent throughout Scripture is that we're supposed to praise him. What do you think that looks like anyway? Well, I don't know, very solemnly. Oh, I thank you. I appreciate you. How about, man, I'm just so excited you called me and I know who you are. And can you do that? But then you hear when these guys come up here and start trying to get you to do that or at least be open to it, you get all uncomfortable. Okay, I'm not talking about us going all charismania here. I'm just saying allow yourself, if it's you. If it's not you, don't generate it. We're not trying to, do this, kind of thing that charismatics do to try to force, like, if you don't do this, you're not saved. Or you don't do that, No, if it's you, let it loose a little bit. If it's not you, keep doing what you do. You're not going to see me doing all that stuff because it's not me, okay? And so don't go, well, Rabbi doesn't do that, so it must be something wrong with it. No, it's just not my personality, okay? I don't get all emotionally whipped up about anything. I just don't, all right? And so I just want to encourage all of you, be open to allowing yourself to grow in the various areas that you may be uncomfortable. It may be a good thing, okay? It may be a good thing. Look, I was uncomfortable with it in the beginning just because it was different. Everybody's uncomfortable with different. Some of you are uncomfortable because it was too familiar. Well, it can come from either side. It can come from either side. All right. All right, that being said, go back to Shamash Rob and the live stream questions.
Okay, Jeff and Leanne Benson, question, Rabbi, can you please help me better understand 1 Timothy chapter 2, verse 15?
So first of all, we have this is taking us back to the beginning, right? It's talking about Adam and Chava. So it's taking us back to the beginning. And we're dealing with some issues here that Paul is instructing Timothy about. And we have the topic, okay, let's go back to the rules of engagement. Rule number 1 is context, right? We need to know what's going on. So, who's talking here? Shaul, right? Chapter 1, verse 1, Shaul, an emissary, and who's he talking to? To Timothy. Okay, well, that's simple enough. We know who the audience is, we know who's speaking. So what is the issue being addressed? Like, why are they having a conversation? What is Paul talking about? Okay? So in the beginning of chapter 2, he says, first of all, then I urge that petitions, prayers, intercessions, thanksgivings be made for all men, for all. Okay, so he's talking about prayer in some way. Look at verse 8. So I resolve that men pray everywhere, lifting up hands. So there's something to do with praying that's going on here, all right? Now, so he's talking about the men and the men doing certain things. And then when we get to verse 9, it says, likewise, that the women dress themselves becomingly with decency and sensibleness, not with braided hair or gold or pearls or costly garments, but with good works, which is becoming for women undertaking worship of the worship of Elohim. So he's addressing the men on one level about something, and now the ladies. So the context seems to be not just praying, but worship, and especially when he talks to Timothy, it's almost always about ministering in some way. He's training him for the role of ministering. And that also means that ministry is going to have ladies, wives of the ministers, and that kind of thing, have to have a certain sense of what their role is supposed to look like. Because guess what? You will be imitated, okay? So if your behavior is A, other women are going to then go, oh, that's appropriate, and start doing it, whether it's appropriate or not. Okay, so he's telling the men, okay, starting in verse 1, right? It says, I urge that petitions, prayers, etc. be made for all men, for sovereigns and all those who are in authority, in order that we lead a calm and peaceable life in all reverence and seriousness. For this is good and acceptable before Elohim our Savior, who desires all men to be saved and to come to the knowledge of the truth, etc. Now, he's talking to the men, and the reason we know that is because he doesn't say that he's talking to the men right here, but what he does say is, likewise the women, which means that the other stuff was for the men. Easy conclusion to jump to, right? I mean, he goes, well, likewise, now let me talk to the women. So he's trying to address the men in a certain way. We're not going to break down all the details here because we are going to go through these letters, okay? And when we do, we will break it all down. So then he says, and there was a question on Facebook that had to do with this, then he says, likewise the women, okay, so dress sensibly, but more importantly, your good works is what should be seen. In other words, don't distract people with all of this outward stuff like the way you dress. Not that you shouldn't look nice, but just understand it's more important that your works shine before men, so to speak, okay? Then we get to this very kind of controversial thing. It says, let a woman learn in silence, in all subjection. Okay, let a woman learn in silence. So there's other places where he basically tells the ladies to be quiet. This isn't the only place, but you have to understand the context. Context here and the context there are similar. The context in the other place was basically they were sitting in an assembly, in a synagogue, and they didn't have microphones. They didn't have all that kind of stuff going on. Ladies and men sat separately. And by the way, guess how they split them? Not left and right, front and back. The men were in front, ladies were in the back. Guess who couldn't hear very well? Ladies in the back. So they're talking amongst themselves, trying to figure out what they're hearing. What did he say? Type of thing. And that's when Paul said, hey, be quiet, and when you go home, your husband will help you understand what you missed. So it wasn't, ladies, you have no right to talk. Stop disturbing the service, he said. Remember, this is a very targeted, specific pastor to his congregation, a rabbi to his congregation. They were having a problem. He said, here's how I'm going to handle it. Tell the ladies to shut up. In the congregation during the service, don't make a bunch of noise. It wasn't just tell the ladies to shut up. Because you're distracting everybody and nobody can hear anything at that point. But your husbands, when you go home, ask them, by the way, I couldn't hear. What did he say about that? Or am I right? It sounded like he said this. Is that what he was saying? Or whatever the person was teaching, okay? Because of the way the structure of the rooms were and the way they sat people in those days. Okay? So you guys are all sitting intermixed. That is not the way things were. Okay? Men and women did not sit together. And if the women were in the room, they were in the back. Okay? Now, in more modern times, an Orthodox congregation may sit the women on one side and the men on the other side so that they don't have that sort of problem with the hearing. Of course, you got a sound system and electronics now to make things differently. And I'm not saying we should be sitting that way at all. I'm just saying that's what was happening then. So here now Paul is saying, let a woman learn in silence and all subjection. And I do not permit a woman to teach or to have authority over a man, rather to be in silence. Okay, so what he's saying is, when you're dealing with structural issues here, remember he's teaching Timothy how to be a ministry person, right? So he's saying, I want the women to learn in silence, meaning do not sit there and argue and debate. Okay, learn in silence. That doesn't mean you don't have questions. You're allowed to ask questions. It's not what it's talking about here. Okay, learn in silence and all subjection. That's the key. So you're being subjected or submitted to the authority of whoever's teaching. I've seen a lot of women try to get up and get in my face and argue over the years. That's not what Paul's talking about here. That's not acceptable. Okay? That doesn't mean you can't ask questions, because you have questions and you should ask your questions. But this is a different thing. It says let them learn in silence. So during the learning phase, a teacher's teaching and you're learning, Let the teacher teach. Be submitted to that. Be quiet. By the way, all of you should do that to some degree. Be quiet while you're in the learning phase. Then you can ask questions. And you just be patient and you can ask your questions. Then he says, I don't permit a woman to teach or have authority over a man. This messes up the whole vertical alignment deal, okay? We'll probably talk a lot about this next week, or not next week, the week after that when I get back to this teaching on the roles of men and women, all right? And I think that's important that we understand this. So it's not that women can't teach. He doesn't permit. Paul says, I don't. He doesn't say Torah says anything. He says, I don't permit a woman to teach a man. Why? And then he explains why. He says, because Adam was formed first, then Chava. Adam was not deceived. It says, but the woman, having been deceived, fell into transgression, but then he followed her because he was weak. So that's even worse, by the way, on Adam, because he wasn't deceived, but he gave in and did it anyway. All right? Because he was weak. Okay, so now, what happened here is that she jumped up. What do you mean she jumped up? Well, you know what? She's having a conversation that she could have said, excuse me, you need to talk to my husband. She should have said that. And he should have said, excuse me, you can't talk to her, you need to talk to me. All right? Where was he protecting her from all that nonsense? And where was she seeking his protection? So don't think that this whole idea of an independent woman just started like recently. The first one. Well, I don't need a man. I can make my own choices. I can make my own decision. I can talk to whoever I want. Doesn't always work so well. So as we have that kind of playing out here, we're trying to get to verse 15. So this subject is talking about, as we're going through this whole process, and authority and instruction to men, instruction to women, and it's in the context of a place of worship. The idea of prayer and interceding and that kind of thing, and teaching. Okay, so then it says, Adam was not deceived, etc. Then it says, but she shall be saved in childbearing if they continue in belief and love and set apartness with sensibleness. In other words, she will merit favor and be delivered out of whatever her challenge is through taking proper authority with her children and being properly submissive to her husband. In other words, going forward, continuing in belief, love, and set apartness. In other words, embracing the role properly. Now, there's another question that goes along with this that I'm going to kind of sneak in here. All right, this is from Antonia Lumen. This is from a friend, a young mother. She said, found in my Bible, reading this morning, Genesis 3:16, to the woman he said, I will greatly multiply your pain in childbirth. In pain you will bring forth children, yet your desire will be for your husband, and he will rule over you. Interesting wording. I thought I'd look into it more. So far, I haven't really found a good translation. Lots of people have lots of their own translations, so I thought I'd put it out here on Facebook to see what others think about it. Okay. By the way, our Facebook group is not for that. Our Facebook book group is for asking me questions. It's not for just seeing what other people think, all right? You want other opinions, go post in the 5,700 other groups you can post it. If you're seeking this ministry's opinion, this is how you do it, all right? Now, the first part about childbirth is pretty clear. Anyone who birthed a child knows it's painful. But the second part, your desire will be for your husband, and he will rule over you, is the part I'm curious about. I think being under leadership of my husband is like a protection, but this was a curse for eating the fruit of the knowledge of good and evil, the tree of good and evil. Is it bad to have a desire for your husband? Surely not. I'm thinking the meaning has been lost in the translation, and you are correct. Thank you for responding, it says. All right, so what is going on here? I think the wording is problematic. I think what it's trying to say is your desire will be to usurp your husband, to be the husband. And that's why you're going to be cursed. You're going to be cursed because you're going to keep wanting to be him, being in charge, being the first. So it's not about desiring like, I want my husband. That's a good thing. You should desire your husband, okay? And some of you ladies are like, why? And some of you ladies are like, absolutely. But that's the way it should be. The desire should be one for the other. The husband for the wife and the wife for the husband. Should be desire should be there. So why is this a curse? It's because you're going to desire to be that role. That's what you did, jumping in and doing what you did, Chava. And Adam let you, which was worse in a sense. And so this is now the problem going forward, is that women from now on will have this tendency or problem with the temptation to usurp, to be the husband, to make husband-like decisions, take on the husband role. Now you can see where the curse came from? Okay? So it's not desiring him, but desiring to do his job, to be him as far as the role. And by the way, ladies, you should all know, when you do that, does it really go well ultimately? No. Okay, are you actually happy when you start ruling the roost? You think you are for a little while, but are you really? No. It's a curse. It's a curse. But some of you think, but he can't do it. Well, you picked him. Whose fault is that? I'm just saying. Ladies, I said this last week, I think, in the teaching, part 1 of the roles of men and women. I said, ladies, you need to understand what you need to do in terms of picking. You need to find a man who's going to be able to be the head. By head, I mean keep you safe and provide for you. Not a real complicated role, but it covers a lot of stuff, okay? Because provide for you includes your emotions, your spiritual life, your physical life. All areas of your life, provide for you. Protect you, keep you safe in all areas of your life. It covers a lot. It's 2 words, cover a lot of stuff. Problem is, if you don't have a man that can do those things, you'll tend to jump over him to start doing the providing and protecting. Not good, not good. Let's get back to Paul here for a second in Timothy. I'm going to agree 100% with this from a different perspective when he says, I don't let women teach men. Now, by the way, we do have scripture that says that the older women are supposed to teach the younger women. Of course, if the older women are already messed up, how are they going to teach the younger women? If the older women have not figured out how to walk a proper walk as a woman, how are they going to teach a younger woman how to do it? Some of you women are like, well, I need to be able to teach the women, but you're all jacked up yourself. You have no idea what you're doing. Where's your evidence that you have any idea what you're doing? For people to teach, okay, you should already have succeeded at what you're teaching. Okay, I teach this Level Up program. I've leveled up in every one of those areas, and I can teach you how to do it, right? But if I hadn't, okay, if I'm going to teach you how to level up financially and I'm broke, struggling, don't know how to pay my bills, spend money in all kinds of dumb ways, don't even have a budget or any of these things, well, why would you listen to me? And I could teach you things to do, but if I'm not doing it, then really, why would you listen to that? And so, ladies, you're going to teach the younger ladies? Where's the evidence that you actually have accomplished and succeeded being a woman? Just saying. But see, you people are really foolish, we'll use that word, okay? You'll ask broke people for financial advice. You'll ask people who have disastrous relationships for relationship advice. You understand what I'm saying? This is what we do. We don't go find someone who's actually successful and ask them for advice. I say, how did you do that? It's like Elder talks about, he's got this rich uncle. He says, nobody ever asked until he did. How did you do that? How did you become wealthy? And the uncle said, amazingly, you're the first one who's ever asked me that. Sad, but it's true, right? This is how people are. We ask the wrong people for advice and for counsel and for guidance, It's kind of like, I remember there was a guy I worked with in insurance many years ago, and he helped do estate planning as well as life insurance and that kind of stuff. And he had a client who was very wealthy that he was trying to help with some of the planning. And the client's, somewhat broke, very poor accountant told him it was bad advice and he shouldn't do it. He said, okay, so I'm a millionaire and so are you, and I'm trying to give you guidance, but you're going to listen to your $60,000 or $40,000 a year. This is in New York where that was broke, accountant, because he doesn't think I'm right. Something's wrong in this picture. If he knows better, why is he broke? Okay? I have what you have, and I know how to protect it and keep it safe and help it grow. You might want to listen to me. Now, of course, if you're talking about an agent trying to get you to do estate planning, that agent doesn't have any estate planning, doesn't have any investments, and he's broke, you shouldn't be listening to him. Because my first question always to a salesperson is, do you own the product? Okay? If you don't own the product, why are you selling it to me? So, ladies, you should not be offering unless you already have, having accomplished, okay? So when people say, well, what about women teaching in the congregation? I don't have women teaching in the congregation. Oh, but you let your wife teach. Okay, so I had my wife come up during Torah study to teach something that she's expert in, okay, that she has studied a tremendous amount on, about the tabernacle, and just do a presentation about the tabernacle. There was zero halachic things being taught that are relevant to you today to do. Unless there was a temple, there was nothing that you would need to do. So she wasn't up here teaching you. She was giving a presentation about what the scripture was describing in the tabernacle. Nothing wrong with that. It isn't a woman teaching men and all that other type of stuff. Because I have some people say all these things and they say, oh, you're a hypocrite. No, I'm not. Now, as far as ladies teaching from here, well, Paul says, I don't let women teach men. Okay, that's fine, or have authority over men. I wouldn't put a woman up here no matter what, at least until, I wouldn't even think about the idea, at least until I've got the men doing what they need to do. Okay? You don't see a whole bunch of men up here teaching. You know why? They're not ready. They're not able. I got some men that think they're almost ready, think they're starting to get things done, but they're not there yet. I will have a teaching program eventually with the yeshiva to get them there. But ladies, you should not want ladies up here until the men are doing it. Because then they'll never do it. Okay, when the person who asked earlier about lukewarm, you talk about lukewarm, you get a bunch of ladies to do what a man should do, and that man's gonna kick back, crack open a beer, and do nothing. You know that's true. Ladies, don't get mad at your lazy you-know-what husband because you're out there doing things he should do, and so he's like, fine, you do it, kicks back, and he's gonna watch the game and drink a beer. And you're all mad at him. Why are you mad at him? You caused that situation to be there. As soon as you jump in to do it, he's like, fine, you do it. I didn't want to do it in the first place. That's what he's thinking, all right? See, but being a man means you do what you have to do whether you want to do it or not. Okay, that's what a man is. A man does what has to be done whether he wants to or not. It's because it has to get done. It doesn't matter that you don't want to. Okay, what does wanting to have to do with anything? All right? So, hopefully that answered a long-winded way of answering, 1 Timothy 2:15, okay? Next.
Okay, from m.t.o.i. Odessa. So I heard you say that people aren't sinning against Yahweh if they're not covenanted. Can you explain in Genesis 15, chapter 15, verse 16, 18, and 20, and Yonah 1, verse 2, where these people covenanted, it says they sinned against Yahweh.
You know what? There was another one that somebody had posted that was very similar to that. So I'm going to answer it, and hopefully I'll be able to take this answer. And I don't have it in my notes here, which was the one. Genesis, we're not putting the verse up on the screen so I know what they were looking at. Genesis
Chapter 15, verse 16,
okay, 15,
and 18 and 20.
Okay, 15, 16, that's 12, 15, 16. Okay, 15, 16 says, then in the fourth generation they shall return here, for the crookedness of the Amorites is not yet complete. I don't know what that has to do with the question. And what was the other verse?
18, 20.
Chapter 18 and verse 20? Okay. And Yahweh said, because of the outcry against Sodom and Gomorrah is great, and because their sin is very heavy. Okay. So, what's going on here? I said that you have to have a certain relationship with Yahweh in order to be the sin, a breach of relationship with Yahweh. Can we understand it in the beginning, when he created the flood? Everybody was his, and then a bunch of people went in the wrong direction, and they breached the relationship with him. Once he started scattering and dispersing people all over the place, now relationship was by him calling and them choosing to hear the call. So it changed. Everybody by default in the beginning was his, and when their behavior did matter in terms of that breach of relationship. Now, when we look at I guess 15, 16 is talking about the Amorites, okay? So in other words, why were the Amorites in trouble? Because the Amorites, and also this thing with Sodom and Gomorrah says the outcry is great and their sin is heavy. They were causing a problem with the people around them. So were the Amorites. Okay, these people were not just disobeying Yahweh. They were causing harm to those around them. There was a breach of relationship in the horizontal. I mean, think about the things going on in Sodom and Gomorrah. There was certainly not a user-friendly place to be unless you were a debaucherous, whatever they were at the time. You didn't fit in there. That's where. So again, it's not so much a breach of relationship from the point of view of having an active relationship. Yahweh was just saying, I never made you to do this, and so I'm about ready to wipe you out because you're hindering the things I'm trying to do. You're spreading contagion of bad behavior. All right? Now, when he was wiping out some of the ites, those ites may have had relationship, which is why he was using Israel as his hand of judgment in those situations. We don't know the relationship he had with these different nations at that time. But he mentions that Israel is going to be his hand in bringing judgment against nations that breached a relationship with him. We just don't have any detail of what that was, what it looked like, and why it was there. Hopefully we understand this. Okay, so hopefully that answered the question for this question from here. Okay? So it wasn't just because somebody wasn't keeping the Sabbath or they weren't eating right or some other thing. There was a relationship, an expectation between Yahweh and these peoples, and they had breached it, and in breaching it, he was bringing judgment. Look at the judgment he brought on Egypt. Was the judgment he brought on Egypt because Egypt was pagan, or because of how they treated Israel, his people? And so this is part of what he was doing. All right, next.